This video is for educational and entertainment use only. The views in this video do not necessarily represent the views or life of Marlon
What's
Dixon.
going on, y'all? So it's one thing that I've noticed about when I try to explain stuff to people, they truly don't believe what I be saying. So what I'm gonna start doing is making videos and show y'all some of the articles that I read, and I'm gonna try to put two and two together as I'm reading the article with you guys. So I want you guys to just follow me with this article that's real crazy right now because, like I said, I live in Iowa currently. So this article kept referring to Iowa because I already previously read it, but I'm gonna read it with you guys. So I'm gonna share my screen so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So this right here, this article, as you guys can see, let me move this down. What does that say? COVID is rampant among deer, research shows. The findings are a reminder that the human health is intertwined with that of animals, and inattention to other species could prolong the pandemic. Now, most people not understanding that people that eat meat, that those are animals. So by the time that meat get to your plate, after you done cooked it, you done bought it, you done went to whatever store and got it, it was in the wild or it was farm raised. And if it was farm raised, it's close intact. These deers are in the wild. This is not no farm deer. These are in the wild and they're getting COVID. Listen. Humans have infected wild deer with COVID-19 in a handful of U.S. states, and there's evidence the virus has been spreading between deer, according to recent studies which outline findings that could complicate the path out of the pandemic. Scientists swabbed the nostrils of white-tailed deer in Ohio and found evidence of at least 6 separate times that humans spread the coronavirus to deer, according to a study published last week in Nature. Now think about this. When humans normally and generally interact with deer, people are hunting. It's hunting season, so that they're killing the deer. They're not hugging the deer. A lot of times, not feeding the deer. Playing with the deer. So that right there kind of like made me think, like, how are the humans transmitting this to the animals? Now, maybe we might have some humans outside that throwing up. Maybe they pissing. Maybe they shouldn't, and maybe the deer is putting his nose bad and maybe smelling it. And then in the article, you'll learn that deers nose to nose each other. That's my theory. I don't know, but let's keep going. About 1/3 of the deer sample had an active or recent infection, the study says. Similar research in Iowa of tissue from roadkill and hunted deer found widespread evidence of the virus. Now, this is what's so crazy about this being the ABC News. They talking about that they found this in Iowa. Mind you, I live in Iowa. I haven't seen no article about Iowa testing any of these animals that's roadkill on the side of the road, and then they telling the people that's in the state that this is going on. I haven't seen any of that. So when I seen how they kept referring to Iowa, I look like, hold on. Because what they do in Iowa, they actually go and hunt these deer, they cut them, they turn them to deer meat, and then they literally eat it. So now let's really think about this before we go too deep. If you hunt an animal that you can't physically see that this animal has COVID, you kill an animal. Now the animal has this COVID inside its body, so it's in its blood. You get the blood, they wiping the blood all over their faces, they holding the animal up by the antlers, and they doing all this stuff. They throwing it in the truck, they taking it home, they skinning it, they doing all this stuff, and then they eat it. So if the virus is inside the body and you done dealt with the body all this time, all the way till you finally put it on the stove, and then you put it into your body after you quote unquote cooked it a little bit, is there a high or a low chance that you are infected because of the meat that you chose to eat? Let you think about that. The research suggests the coronavirus could be taking hold in free-ranging species that numbered about 30 million in the United States. No cases of COVID spread from deer to human have been reported, but it's possible, scientists say. like I just said, if they eating it, they think that they getting COVID from interacting with people, yet they already been eating this deer meat for the last year. It's a reminder that human health is intertwined with that of animals, and inattention to other species could prolong the pandemic and complicate the quest to control COVID. Widespread sustained circulation of the virus in deer could represent a risk to people if mutations in deer created a new variant. We started off coronavirus, COVID-19, then we went to the Delta variant. Shortly after that, Omicron. So let's think about this. If you understand anything about historic viruses, like even they got this stuff even in movies, when it jumped from the human species to the animal species, we have different biologies inside of us. When it jumps from us to them, that's a mutation. When it jumps from them to us, a whole nother mutation. And when we spread it to other humans, it starts to mutate further. So people not really understanding that what's really going on. Everybody thinking they know what's going on, but they not really understanding what's going on. And then you got to understand, people are getting the, they getting that, and they still coming with the COVID. They still got Delta, they still got Omicron, and some of them still got COVID-19, although they got the vaccination and they got the booster. Because of the mutation that they don't understand. You getting, it's for one mutation, not two others, or not how many of them more coming down the line. Listen, the sheer possibility that these things are happening, it's unknown, makes this very unsettling, says Sarah, a virologist at Pennsylvania State University. We could be caught by surprise with a completely different variant. Let me go back to when it came out. January 2nd, 2022. So this is today. Today is January 2nd, 2022, the second day of the year. Today is Sunday. So we could be caught by surprise with a completely different variant, Delta variant, Omicron. That's already two different variants from the COVID-19. So now that it's prevalent in these wild animals and people going out hunting animals and eating these animals, that's the way that they gonna end up getting it. Let's keep going. Early in the pandemic, scientists grew concerned the virus could jump from humans to other animals. One study found many mammals would report receptors that could allow the virus to bind in their cells, with deer among those at high risk. They began to investigate. First, in a laboratory study, researchers spritzed 4 fawn noses with infectious coronavirus to test whether the virus could infect them. I wish I had my little sprayer. When if you guys know what spritz is, the black women, y'all, that's what a spritz is. So they got the coronavirus. Listen to what they initially said, that the deer have it and there's no transmission. How did they get this virus from humans? But here, if you read down what I just said, they spritzed the nose with the virus. So is this exactly how they got it? And then they start to nose each other, and then it started to spread. So researchers, scientists, always remember this. The most interesting thing that I heard, when the higher power come back, the first two groups of people that's gonna go is the scientists and the lawyers. The scientists, because they the ones that's trying to figure out and do all this extra stuff, and the lawyers, because they the ones that's writing and manipulating the laws. And I'm in law school, by the way. So that's another story. To test whether the virus could infect them, they also brought 2 uninfected deer into the same room, keeping them separated with a plexiglass barrier that didn't reach the ceiling. We had 4 inoculated animals and 2 contact animals. Everybody got infected and shared significant amounts of infectious virus. This was a surprise, said Diego Deal, an associate professor of virology at Cornell University, who helped lead the research. The deer likely shared the virus through nasal secretions that travel over the barrier by air, he said. The infected deer did not exhibit noticeable symptoms. So although they sprayed these 4 deer, the other 2 ended up getting infected but they didn't show symptoms because they was around those that was actually infected, and the air went over, and then they breathed it in and got it. Deer often travel in herds and touch noses, making transmission a concern. So federal scientists tested blood samples of wild deer in Illinois, Michigan, New York, Pennsylvania. They eventually tested 624 samples, finding that about 40% of samples collected in 2021 had antibodies that suggested past infection. Past. So they tested them in 2021, and 40% of them either had antibodies that, well, they did have antibodies that suggested a past infection. I mean, past means 2020. So if they say that it's a concern that they touching noses and they spreading it, you have to understand that if these deers that they caught in 2021 had it in 2020, what about those deers that everybody was touching noses with and everybody killed and then consumed in 2020? You gotta think. The latest studies provide evidence of active and recent infection. In the peer-reviewed Ohio State University study, 360 free-ranging, which means they out there in the wild moving on their own, deer got nasal swabs with 35.8% testing positive. The researchers were able to culture virus for 2 samples, meaning they could grow live virus. They took a sample out of these deer's nose, put it on a little glass, and then they grew a live virus, which means they grew another type of virus. And after reviewing genetic relationships between viruses from 14 deer, we've got evidence we have deer-to-deer transmission occurring, said Andrew Bowman, an associate professor in the Department of Veterinary Preventive Medicine at Ohio State University. Author of the study, the researchers found 6 mutations in deer that are uncommon in people. Delta variant, Omicron, and they got 6 more. They say they sick. Look, right there. Researchers found 6 mutations in deer that are uncommon in people. Uncommon meaning it ain't happened yet. A preprint study led by whoever, another name, at Penn State found the coronavirus in lymph nodes of 94 of 283 deer hunted or killed by vehicles in Iowa in 2020. Penn State is not in Iowa, but they found that the coronavirus in the lymph nodes of 94 of 283 deer hunted or killed by vehicles hunted. So they hunted the deer, killed the deer, and then they swabbed the deer. Or the deer that got hit by a car, truck, whatever hit the deer, killed. So they swabbed these in 2020. But if they already found that a decent percentage of them had it already, why ain't nobody know that? Both studies suggest the virus spilled over from humans to deer in several locations at several times. The common viral genome circulating in humans at the time were also circulating in deer, the study says. How did these people get these deer to be that close to them for them to give them that virus if they didn't spritz it? Researchers can't say for sure how the deer are becoming infected or if the virus will persist in the species. Deer, unambiguously, in many American communities, are among the most abundant large mammals in the U.S. So they're saying that they don't know how they becoming infected, but earlier, as you've seen, they said they spritz them. Maybe they kept those in the lab, but animals kind of break out of the lab, like they break out of the zoo. Maybe they was let back into the wild. We never know what's really going on. If they're maintaining the virus, that's a whole other host we need to be looking at for future variants to assess whether current vaccines will be affected and how we need to control spread. It complicates things considerably because these is an animal and then they got 6 new mutations in the animal and people kill those animals, interact with those animals as they dead, and then they consume those animals. They know what's getting ready to come. So that's why it's going to complicate things considerably because now that don't even work. So now they got to come up with a new couple of them. Be on the lookout for them pretty soon. If the virus does establish itself long-term, scientists says it presents several potential risks. Circulation in deer could allow variants that are no longer infecting humans, like the alpha variant, never even heard of that, for example, to continue cycling in animals. That would give these strains the potential to reintroduce themselves to people later. In another scenario, widespread transmission could allow the virus to accumulate mutations in deer and evolve differently before spreading into people with new characteristics. So now it go from this deer to this deer, it mutate, go to another deer, mutate, go to another deer, mutate, go to another deer. Then by the time the humans end up getting that one of those mutations, it mutating them different. And then it go to another human and mutate. This will happen on Dutch mink farms in 2020. After the virus spread from people to mink, it returned to infect humans and had new mutations. The mink variant shows spillback is possible. If deer are hosts to the coronavirus, they could also pass the virus to other animals. Hey, little squirrel. Hey, little badger. Hey, little beaver. Hey, big bear. Let alone imagine if a carcass of a deer is out there and other little mites and mice and rats and all that start eating it and that's infected, then they go about okay. Whenever the virus jumps into a different species, that could lead to adaptation. And in the scenario, some scientists view was as unlikely, the virus could recombine with other coronaviruses already established in deer to create a hybrid virus. So now this deer originally got this virus. The virus went spread to other deers and came back with a whole different virus. And now one host is infected with both viruses that creates a brand new virus. There are endemic coronaviruses in animals. Some we know and many we don't know. Recombination could give rise to a completely different variant that can be different, very different from the parent virus, and it could have altered abilities. These are long-term concerns if deer are, in fact, a permanent host. So can people continue to eat deer? Will people continue to eat deer? Is this a scare tactic to get people not to eat deer? Or if the people that actually eat deer is hosting one of the 6 mutations that was found and they don't know yet. The greatest risk to people still remains transmission of the virus from person to person, says Tom, an assistant director at National White, who is helping lead the federal efforts to identify. Could that change later on? Absolutely. And that's why we're doing these things to get a handle on what's happening to deer. The American Rescue Plan Act provided $6 million for researchers to study the coronavirus in white-tailed deer. The researchers are searching for the virus among deer in 30 states. That's only 30 states. It's 20 more states. It's 20 more states that they ain't researching. So what happens to those deer if those deer migrate to another different state that they're not researching in? Separately, scientists are collecting blood samples from other animals such as coyotes, skunks, raccoons to see if any of those creatures have antibodies. They're going to have them. If we let the virus continue to circulate among humans, we're not only endangering the vulnerable section of our population, but we could also be putting our animals and environment at danger. So that's the end of the article right there. That's what we got going on right now, ladies and gentlemen. We have this going on where we are having these animals get this coronavirus and the virus is mutating in the animals. And then as it's mutating in the animals, it's jumping back to humans with those different mutations. And then even if you had this original mutation, when the new one comes, it's something different. So your body technically don't have antibodies to the new one. It has it to the old one. So most people not understanding that I'm gonna recommend you have to watch what you eat, as you need to understand. Most people not understanding that they're not watching what they eat. Also, you got to understand this: the running water. What animals use the bathroom in the water? Animals use the bathroom on the land. You don't know what you're stepping in when you outside stepping on it. And now that it's wintertime and the snow has covered everything up, you really don't know what's going on. So now I don't want to say this to scare people, but what I'm trying to explain to you is you might want to take precautions in the things that you're doing with your life. And you might want to be cautious of the things that you're doing in your life if you want to prolong your life. because this stuff that's going on out here right now with this virus that he changing, everybody said he getting sick. You got to understand this. The sun gives off blue light. It increases your mood, your attention, and it gives you the vitamin D that you need. When the sun goes away in the winter, that's when everybody starts to get colds. The reason they getting colds is because they don't have that heat source that's able to help their body to burn out those infections. Why do you think people say, well, you get a cold in the summer, that's the worst? Why? Because you're not supposed to be having that disease in the summer. That's why it's worse, because it's so hot outside for you to be in the house with the chills. The sun goes down earlier in the wintertime, so you're not getting that much sunlight. Because you're not getting that much sunlight, your body not able to do what it need to do. And then also, you're not getting your vitamin D. Most people not eating healthy. They're not eating right. They're not exercising. It's a plethora of things that people are not doing to make sure that themselves will be okay. So I'm not gonna make this too long because I don't want to scare nobody, but I'm gonna start like doing these type of videos like this, because I think sharing my screen to walk you guys through the article and then think what I think as I'm reading the article, rather than me just saying it to y'all and y'all like, where's this information coming from? I need to start showing y'all some of these things, because a lot of these articles, I do research every day and I read so many articles every day that it's literally a shame. Like, and I think I might need to just start just doing that every day to just show people the articles that I read and go over them with people for people to understand this stuff is real. Scientists spritz the deer. Scientists are going out researching the deer. So if you think normally how humans interact with deer, they're hunting the deer. That's the normal interaction. But who is interacting with the deer to actually bring the deer to them? The scientists. So when they saying they don't understand, scientists is saying they don't understand how the deer is getting the coronavirus. Y'all just said in the article, y'all that spritz them, and y'all the ones that study interacting with them. Everybody else is hunting them. So this is a lot of information. Hopefully everybody stayed to the end of the video. You learned something. Not, I really don't know what to tell you. It's a lot going on right now, and it's just not just the science community. It's just not this virus and all this stuff. It's so many different things that I want to talk about that I'm gonna get ready to come right back and go ahead and go through a whole another article that I end up just bumping into the other day too. You guys got to be hip to this knowledge and stay tuned. So this is going to be the new Duffle LO to sit down. I'm gonna get ready and give me some new stuff while I start my office, and then I'm gonna make the videos like that. But for right now, before I get there, I'm gonna just give y'all what I can give y'all. So hopefully you guys understand what I just said, and that's all I gotta say.
This video is for educational and entertainment use only. The views in this video do not necessarily represent the views or life of Marlon Dixon.